Are you an international student taking the ACT soon and wondering what you can do to make sure you're totally prepared for the international version of the exam? Or maybe you're just a US student curious about how the ACT is totally different for international students. Either way, in this video, I'm going to get into both some of the differences between the US and international tests, and I'm going to give you guys some tips for how to approach a computer-based ACT test. We have a full online course for the ACT. It's called the Best ACT Prep Course Ever. We've had lots of students get 35s with our course and improve their scores up to 12 points. So make sure you go check it out at SupertutorTV.com. We also have 2 books for the ACT Math section, the Best ACT Math Books Ever, and those are available worldwide on Amazon.com. So make sure you check that out. We'll have a link in the description of this video as well to those books and to our course if you're wondering and want to check those out. Also, make sure that you subscribe to our channel if you're taking the ACT, because we have lots of awesome videos that we're releasing to give you guys free tips. So that's totally free. The other thing that's totally free is our mailing list. SupertutorTV.com/subscribe will keep you in the know of our latest videos, any tips we have, and any discounts or giveaways, etc. that we might be running. So here's the scoop. In 2018, ACT announced that international testing centers would only be administering computer-based ACT tests. What this means for you guys is if you're taking the test and it's not in the US, you're going to be taking it on a computer. True, some US students also take the test on a computer, and all of these tips will work for those students as well. What I want to talk you guys through is how you can be best prepared for the whole computer system and how things are going to go on test day, because it is different from taking a paper test. Let's start with my first tip, which is practice from a screen. Obviously, the biggest difference when you're taking a test on a screen versus on paper is that you're reading everything off of a computer instead of reading it from a piece of paper. And that experience is different, and social scientists have found that people respond to information on a screen in different ways. So it makes sense that if you're taking the test on a screen, it would be a really good idea to practice from a screen. This tip is actually twofold. My first point on this is you want to get a hold of as many official module kind of ACT quote online tests as you can. There are 3 that I know of that are available. The best one being the free online ACT example test that's available at ACT.org. ACT also has 2 computerized based tests that are available in its ACT official prep pack, which is basically this book, and you buy this book, and then it comes with a code on the inside of the book where you log in and you get online access to 2 online tests. If you're an international student, this is a really good idea. In the US, it's like 40 bucks. I don't know how much it is in your local currency, but here's what's weird is this book with the code inside is actually cheaper in the US at least than getting the course by itself. So make sure you price shop. The second way that you can practice from a screen is actually using PDFs of ACTs. We link to a lot of practice ACTs you can get in PDF form on our resources page, which is SupertutorTV.com/resources, totally free links to several released PDFs of ACTs. You can get, I think there's at least 5 there. And you can use those PDFs on your screen by using 2 different PDF viewers, at least for the reading and science sections. So you can see the passages on the left and the questions on the right. And what I recommend is you just open 2 windows with the same test, and then you can kind of scroll and you can match things up, and then you're not scrolling up and down. Because if you try to take the test, like the reading test, and you're scrolling up and down, you're going to spend all your time scrolling. It's going to take forever. The other thing that I'll say is you want to make sure that you keep track of all your answer choices as you go. If you are going to be doing this 2 PDF system, I recommend that you then get like a pencil and paper and just write down like number 1A, 2B, etc. Number 2, my second tip is use a whiteboard and a marker to practice. If you don't already know, when you show up on test day, you're going to be given a whiteboard and a marker, and that's what you're given to write with. So it's a little bit different from a pencil. I recommend you test it out for yourself by getting one. I would advise you to get probably a smaller one because you don't know how big that whiteboard is going to be. It might only be like 8.5 by 11. It might be bigger. Who knows? In any case, get used to working with a whiteboard. How do you work with a whiteboard? Well, first in the English section, you might just write down notes or anything that's like a little bit confusing for yourself. In the math section, though, obviously you're doing all of your math work on that whiteboard. The other thing that I like to do sometimes is partition my whiteboard so that I'm a little bit strategic in terms of what areas I erase when. In that little section, you can put overall notes, you can put For example, questions that you wanted to double check, but you can be a little bit more specific in that little box than you could if you're just using the flags tool. And I'm going to show you the flags tool in our next tip. My next tip is make sure you familiarize yourself with all the functions on the online ACT module. Remember how I told you to practice from a screen? We'll also make sure that you spend some time or you spend a few minutes just familiarizing yourself with all of the different little tools that are in that ACT online exam. You can see here you can do untimed CBT or timed CBTs. I recommend that you try it timed, but I'm just going to open up one of these really fast so that you can see kind of how it works. And here you can see up at the top, we have like next and previous and nav. These are like the 3 buttons up here. So my first tip is, as you go from question to question, I don't recommend that you jump from question to question down here because it's very likely that you could screw up and accidentally click too far forward and skip a question. Instead, I recommend that you use the next tab. The only section where I would say that you might be able to skip around is the reading because it's really consistently numbered, meaning question 11 is going to be a new passage, right? So like all the ones with a 1 in them in the ones place are going to be a new passage. So that's the first question in the new passage. Then you have 21. That's the next passage, right? Humanities, and then you have 31. Because everything's numbered so evenly, that's the only section where you really could do things out of order and be successful, in my opinion. Everything else is going to be a lot harder to do stuff out of order just because of the nature of the online test. Here's another tool that I want you guys to see, and that is this navigation tool right here. So you can see that we have the ability to flag questions. So if you want to use that, you can use that. And as you can see with flag, I can click on flag while I'm on a question, and then it flags it as something that I need to come back to. And you can also see what is unanswered and what's answered so that you don't totally like not answer things and like leave yourself in a ditch. But like I said, I wouldn't click around here to navigate forward. I would use this next. Let's check out some of these tools because some are really helpful, and if you don't get to know them, you're missing out. And I just recommend you try clicking on all of these buttons just as practice so that you get to know this module. We have a magnifier that just like zooms in on things, right? This isn't super helpful in most questions, but it can be really helpful if you have chart or graph questions and you're trying to figure out exactly where a dot is. So remember that for your science and math. Highlighter, this is kind of useful. Maybe in word problems on math it can be useful. It's definitely useful on the reading, but here's the catch. When I move on to the next question, look what happens. The highlight completely disappears. So just know that the highlighter only works on what you're on. But obviously that can still be helpful. Like if you're trying to trace where information is, it can still be a helpful tool. Line reader. If anybody knows what the line reader does, tell us in the comments below because I can't figure it out. Then we have answer eliminator. I always recommend that you turn answer eliminator on because it's definitely really helpful. You see how it puts these X's here? That means that if I know that those two are not possible, I can then narrow and use process of elimination. Answer masking is kind of this weird thing where you don't peek at the answers. There's also clear highlight over here. There's reload, so you can reload if you need to or if something didn't seem to load right. You can zoom in on things, zoom out on things. End section. In this final section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tips on every section and how it's a little bit different from the paper and some tips for how you can really stay on top of everything. First, let's talk English. I don't really think that the English is much harder here than it is on paper. It's the one section that I think is actually pretty easy, and they highlight it for you. It's almost easier in that sense because your eye's totally drawn to it. As you can see, you don't really have any question numbers up here. You don't have to worry about that. But you can see here, we can use highlighting sometimes to either highlight our bare bones sentence or something else. I could alternatively highlight all the things that I want to cross off. So you can see how I can kind of like use the highlighter to sort of help me do what I would do with a pencil, okay? The thing that I'm going to stress to you guys in the math section, the biggest mistake that I see students make when they start taking this test on a computer is that you guys start thinking that you should be doing a lot of mental math. Do not think that. You need to write as much as possible. You will get more wrong typically as you transition to a computer-based test because you are going to be tempted to never write things down because it's not written down for you. And it's harder to go from here to here than it is to go from here to here, right? So make sure you're disciplined, write everything down, redraw every picture, draw, write. Do not let the fact that everything's on a screen make you think you should be doing things up here. Don't do it. When you're in the reading section, my best advice is use your whiteboard to map your passage. The other thing that's awesome about your whiteboard is while the highlights always disappear after every question, your whiteboard doesn't. So you can create a passage map where you have sort of paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, or where you sort of visually create space that would represent where your paragraphs are. And then you can kind of write on your whiteboard in the same positions, kind of your map, so that it's like literally like a map of the passage, and you write little notes. And then you can kind of fill that in as you go and have that help you know where to go as you're reading. One of my biggest tips on the science section for people is to constantly be underlining when they take the paper test. Obviously, you can do some of that over here, but you can also use your whiteboard to sort of write down each detail and also to write down trends. Anything that's going to help you on further questions on the science section, remember, you can't keep your highlights from question to question, so you want to make sure that you've got it somewhere on your whiteboard. And again, you might want to partition your whiteboard for the science so that you can hold on to sort of like trends, things like that, interpretations. So on my science whiteboard, I might divide it into pieces. I might have like one piece where it's just like never erase, like one little box, which is my never erase box during every section. We have that boxed off. I might have a erase after this passage section where I'm breaking down the passage, where I'm looking at trends as this figure goes up, that figure goes down, for example. Anytime I have those dueling scientists or dueling student kind of questions, I might summarize each of those paragraphs on my whiteboard then in that box that I just erased at the end of that whole section. And then I might have a little place where I'm working on a question and then I'm erasing that after each question. So you can use your whiteboard, you can kind of divide it up into pieces so that you can manage information. And like I said with the science, it's really important that you're writing stuff down. So important. You really need to use that whiteboard to your advantage. And there you go. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. I know that having the test on a computer or doing a computer-based test definitely introduces new challenges. So make sure that you're ready for them so you can do wonderfully on test day. I wish you the best of luck, and thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye-bye.